Hi everyone, welcome to EduTALK. EduTALk is a bi-weekly virtual talk show created out of the need for a global learning community focused on topics in education that directly impact Caribbean nations and diaspora nationals working across the globe. EduTALk features teachers, principals, administrators, business leaders, and dignitaries who share their expertise on critical topics facing education today with a common goal of moving education forward and our students upward. I am your co-host, Dr. Dwayne Dice, and I'm the founder and the CEO of Education Solutions International, Inc. Please visit educationsolutionsinternational.org to learn more about what ESI is doing for students, educators, and school communities. And please subscribe to receive ESI updates. I am joined here with my co-host, Dr. Miguel Barker. And Dr. Miguel Barker is the Chief Financial Officer of ESI. Welcome. I will also like to welcome our special guest, Ms. Cecile Swayneson. Dr. Barker, what's happening now? You know, we're in the middle of Women's History Month, and we have had discussions about this in the past, and now we are on again with Miss Cecile. What's going on with you these days in the middle of the month?
Were you speaking to me?
Quite a lot.
Yeah, Dr. Barker.
Okay.
Yeah,
quite a lot. I'm really excited to hear what our guest has to share just about her life and also what she does in her daily, interactions with young people.
yeah.
But as usual, this is about celebrating the work of women. Not that, we are the ones who are supposed to do that. In some ways, the work is already evident, but whatever we can, we also are saying let's pay a homage to the work that women do in the world. And so Women's History Month is a great time to focus on it. But anyone who knows anything about the women in our lives and in our work, every day is Women's History Month.
Yes.
So I'm excited to hear from our
So
guests.
I don't know if I damage your last name. How do you pronounce your last name, Miss Cecile?
Oh, my last name is Swayneson.
Swayneson. Oh, Swayneson. And we're very happy to have you. Miss Swayneson is a behavior specialist. She works with students on the spectrum. And we usually say that they're students with autism. And she works with them one-on-one in their homes, applying the applied behavior analysis services. So, yeah, so let me start off with this. So tell us a little bit about you. And we know that you're from Jamaica. Your origin goes back to Jamaica. So tell us a little bit about you and what you remember about Jamaica when you were there before moving to the US.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Jamaica a long time ago when Jamaica was totally different from it is now. So I grew up in Jamaica in the 60s.
Okay.
So, I just remembered it as being incredibly beautiful. And, I grew up around really lovely children. All the kids that I grew up with were just sweet and kind and nice. And, I had a backyard and I would run around like a wild dog. I mean, just crazy, it was just free, trees, climbing trees. Back then, there were only two television stations. And it came on in the afternoon at 3:00 and it went off at 11:00. So, we had like the Electric Company, Sesame Street. There was a show that we loved called School Challenges.
School Challenge Quiz.
Right? With the two schools that would vie against each other. I don't know if they still have it, but we loved that. Yeah. And then, the movies that we would get were like these old fashioned David Lean, Great Expectation, these movies, Peter Brook, Lord of the Flies, that William Goldman book that they turned into a movie. so, you know, at a very young age, you learn to like really sit down and really listen and hear. There wasn't a lot of shooting up, bang, you know, explosion. You had to really sit and listen. And, you know, I had a father that was very strict. I certainly don't subscribe to the way that he brought us up. But I do remember that like on Sundays, he would pull out this big Milton Paradise Lost, and he would read, you know, this book about fire and brimstone. And I mean, I'm sure he did it to scare the hell out of us. But back then, you know, they did which I'm sure they still do, you know, they did this collective teaching thing where in the mornings when the teachers came into the classroom, the children would get up and say, good morning, teacher, or good morning, sir, or good morning, mom, or good morning, Mr. Roberts, right? So all the kids, you're learning etiquette, right? They're not saying, say good morning. That was just something that you had to do. And, you know, if you wanted to speak in the classroom, you had to put up your hands and, you know, you learn your ABC in a group. So those kids whose parents didn't do anything with them at home, and they didn't know this ABC or counting, they would learn it in that collective group, right? So
hold on 1 second. Dr. Barker, remember this because we grew up in the same type of disciplined way where we were formed in that, right? Dr. Barker, you remember those days?
Yeah, man. I think in those days, it sounded as if every interaction with a teacher, you were singing something. So you wouldn't necessarily say good morning. You say good morning, miss.
right, exactly. Not a rhythm, but cadence. Yeah.
So when did you move to the US?
I came to America in the early 70s.
Oh, wow.
You know, and the first place I came to was the Bronx, and then I went to Connecticut because back then they did not like Jamaicans. So my parents moved us up to a very small town in Connecticut called Ansonia. And then I came back to New York, and I went to Marymount Manhattan College for a little bit. And then I left, I think I left when I was around 19 or thereabouts, and I went to Europe. And, you know, I started traveling a little bit. So I traveled a bit. And I mean, my life has been very varied. So,
but before Dr. Barker is gonna dig in here, because we want to talk about autism and being on, like, what do we mean by the spectrum and working with students students with autism. But before you start working, because you're working for about 4.5 years now with implementing this ABA services. What were you doing before then? Give us that an overview of what you were doing before you took on education on a whole.
I worked as a stylist, as a fashion stylist. So I did a lot of videos. I did a lot of alternative videos, Korn, I don't know, Slayer. I worked with Tina Turner, Janet Jackson, Paul McCartney, Catherine Keener, just a whole, you know, Frank Black and the Pixies, a whole slew of different people, but mostly alternative, right? And so, which was very strange. My first video I actually did in London, and was Slayer. And I actually turned it down, and I said, I don't want to do this because I just thought heavy metal, heavy metal band would be racist. And I was just like, no way in hell. And the producer, who they were calling from California, said, no, actually the lead singer is really lovely and he would totally love you. And I, you know, they convinced me to take the video, but I actually said no. And so that's how I first started doing music videos. After that, I went into fashion styling, and I worked for lots of different magazines as a freelancer. I also work on staff for Time Warner for a magazine called Real Simple as a accessory editor. I worked for House and Garden again in I did a section, I think it was called the Style Maker. So basically I work with artists, you know, artisans, you know, different artists, and that they featured in the magazine. And I work with Kenda Wiley, who is a very renowned African American. I think he was born in Ghana or in Africa somewhere, but he did. I think he did the, what's his name, Obama's portrait. So just a lot of different people. And then I started working with children, but I'd actually started working with children a long time ago in California. I'd worked at the YMCA with homeless mothers.
Mhm.
The YMCA would take in homeless mothers for a year with their children. And so basically I worked with those children, implementing a technique called the RIDE technique. And that's a whole nother story, but the woman who invented it is no longer with us, but she is one of the pioneer in early education. So I utilized her philosophy.
Okay.
So I worked with kids a little bit, and then I eventually did a segue. I wanted something more meaningful. I wanted to do something more meaningful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So basically you just starting to tap into your inner self and purpose, and you realize that you could go down this road of assisting with students who really have needs. They have needs. Okay. Now tell us, we talk about the spectrum, having students on the spectrum, or students who are on the spectrum. What does that mean for people who are grappling with the idea of wondering if students are with autism or not? How do we understand the spectrum and looking at those behaviors or tendencies that might be on the spectrum for students?
Well, the behavior, the maladaptive behaviors are like a red flag. Okay, and that could be from tantruming, throwing materials across the room, screaming, ripping things off the wall, not being able to sit. There's so many tells that are obvious that there is something, not being able to speak, not having the concept of constructing a sentence is very difficult for them. There's just a lot of behavioral, I call them glitches or tics. And just to be honest about what you're seeing and, accept that there's something awry with that child's behavior that is atypical.
Cecile,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about the RIDE technique. And I think you're saying that it was invented by a woman. You want to tell us a little bit about this RIDE technique?
Right. The RIDE technique. Well, this woman, Madga Gerber, she had this technique where she felt that from the child was born, you treat them as if they're grown up. And I know that sounds a little bit hard to grapple with. How can you treat a child like a grown up? And basically, you're going to treat that child or that infant with a lot of respect. And because that child is a living being, you are going to assume that they understand, right? So you do eye contact, even when the child is newborn and you're going to the bathroom, you just turn and look at the child and just say, "Mommy will be back in a bit, I'm going to the bathroom," right? Or I'm going to go get your milk. And so you start having a dialogue with that child. Maybe that child obviously isn't vocal at that, well, they're vocal, but they're not verbal at that time. But they're aware that, wow, this person is communicating with me. And what that does is that it gives that child validation, right? Because you're acknowledging that child by looking in their eyes, by communicating with them, by supporting them, by nurturing them. That's a form of love. So she felt that, and again, so you don't talk down to a child, you don't humiliate them, you don't shame them, you don't assume that they don't understand what you're saying to them. You speak to them as if they understand you, right? That's how you don't talk to them in baby talk. You don't, I don't like using the word don't, but you try to abstain from helping them do something. If they're trying to reach something, you let them do it on their own. You only intervene if you think that they're going to fall and break their neck.
Yeah.
And you start with that from the get-go. And if you do that and really respect their emotions, right? And their feelings, she felt that you would be able to bring up a child that's more well-rounded emotionally, right?
Oh,
Emotionally, intellectually.
So when you ascribe that you said that technique is part of your philosophy.
Yes, a little bit of it. I mean, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I mean, you don't want to like be rigid and like, oh, I'm just going to do Dr. Spock, or I'm only going to do ABA. You know, some people can't stand ABA, right? Some people just don't believe in it. Some people don't like Spock. They don't like whomever is, you know, the trendy person. So I think like with anything as human beings, we are made up of mosaics, right? Our soul, our personality is a mosaic of all these different pieces that fits together to make the most beautiful creation possible, right? It's not just one thing. And if it were one thing, then you'd be really boring and, you know, abnormal and
yeah,
very damaged.
Right. Wait, and I love that question, Dr. Barker, because it's the first I'm hearing about the technique, the right technique.
Yeah.
What do you do when you go in the home, though? Do you talk to the parents about this in order for them to consistently implement these and follow up and holding the child? Maybe you hold the child accountable for the actions if you're going to treat them like an adult. So my question is, do you have conversations with the parents when you're going to home?
Yeah, you have to, because if the parents, you do something, you want the child to generalize. And by generalizing, what that means is that whatever they're able to do with you, the therapist, they should be able to do that with the parent. Like you say, maybe you'll ask the child when the child wants something, like they want juice, juice please, or instead of pointing or taking your hands and physically leading you to the fridge or wherever and pushing and pulling you, the therapist will come in and work on that child using demanding, right? Requesting an item or a material by using words. Whereas a lot of times the parents, it's just easier for them to go like, what do you want? Do you want milk? Do you want juice? And, you know, the kid end up with something that they don't really want, right? Because they don't have the time to find out exactly what it is a child wants, and they don't encourage the child to use words. So when I come in, I will encourage the child to use words. So when I leave, it's the parent's responsibility to make sure that they continue with that. And that's called generalization. So then the child will be able to do it with me, then they can do it with the parents, the peers, siblings, teachers, whomever. So that's what you want for them to be able to do it. So they have socially significant behavior, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're an expert you're someone who has a lot of experience in this field, right? What I'm going to ask you maybe is going off into the controversial piece. I have two pieces to this. The first part is autism, and along that spectrum, there seems to be, and you can correct me, I'm here for learning here, the idea that boys are more earlier diagnosed and supported than girls. I want to know from someone in the field, what are your thoughts on that? Or is it just, you know, what are your thoughts on that? That the idea that boys tend to be diagnosed much quicker and more firm, and perhaps even get the support much more than girls?
It's not that boys are diagnosed quicker. It's that it's been proven that the majority of the children that are on the spectrum are male. That's why.
Proven. Well, when you say proven, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that more boys are diagnosed and therefore more boys are on it? Or it's the case that boys are genetically disposed to being autistic over girls?
Well, we don't know, because nobody knows why it is that boys are more prone to be on the spectrum. Nobody knows what causes autism. I mean, they just don't know. You know, they're trying to figure it out as they go along every single day. And that's why it's such an amazing and fulfilling and exciting and exasperating field to get into, because nobody really knows. But what they do know by science, right, is that, and how do they know that? Because they can follow it, they can track it scientifically, right?
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, more boys are on the spectrum than girls. And when girls are on the spectrum, they're totally, well, to me, they're different from the boys. To me, boys are easier to work with. Girls, to me, are more challenging for whatever reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
So geez, this is really learning for me as well.
Yeah. I have a second part of the question, you know.
Yeah, what's the second?
I have a second part of the
Yeah,
question.
go on.
So from what you're saying is that based on what is happening in the field, boys seem to be more prone to exhibit autistic behavior, right?
Yes.
And but it's not proven one way or the other as a genetic reality. And you're saying from your experience as well, you're saying that girls, it seems to manifest itself differently in boys and girls. Yeah, whereas boys might be more calm, you're saying girls tend to be a little bit more resistant to it. Is that what, when you say it's different, what do you mean?
I never said that boys were more calm than girls. I mean, they can be both explosive, in their temperament, right? It's just the girls are a bit more sophisticated, in how they demonstrate their behavior than boys. Whereas boy, it's just like what you see is what you get, right? With girls, what you're seeing is not necessarily what you're getting. And I'll give you an example like that. What I mean, I had a girl that supposedly had echoic, right? So she would she would maybe repeat things from movies that she had seen, and it was out of context. And sometimes it was, if you ask her a question, she would just repeat it, like, hey, Marcia, what are you, would you like some porridge? And she would, instead of saying yes, she would say, hey, Marcia, would you like some porridge? Anyhow, one day something happened in the home, and the dad came in and he said, Miss Cecile, is it true that Marcia responded to you when you asked her a question, something about an airplane or whatever? And I looked at him and I was kind of like a little bit puzzled, and I said, yes, she did. And he said, oh my God, that's really amazing, because normally she doesn't respond like that. Anyway, one day she was there, and whenever she would speak and I didn't understand, I would just say, I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying. Use your words. And I wouldn't ignore that. I didn't pretend that I understood. I would just say, I don't understand. And one day she looked at me and she said, Miss Cecile, I'm telling you that I want blah, 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 blah. Perfect. And I said, busted. And she came over and she hit me.
Wow.
And luckily her grandmother was there and her grandmother heard. So basically this little girl could actually speak. And I think she was around 7 years old. And she did this whole maneuver because I don't know what was going on in her mind, right? I don't know, but obviously it benefited her. She felt that it benefited her not being able to speak. And only because I just said, I don't understand you. I don't know what you're saying. Not rude, but just very honestly, right? I treated her like a grown-up, I respected her, right? And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Please use your words. I don't understand you. And, finally she's like, I'm trying to tell you that blah, 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 blah. And that's the difference between girls and guys, I think.
Man.
Yeah.
So what do you think is useful? In the regular day, regular people, structure and routine work with us. Dr. Barker and I, we use our calendar like nothing else on earth, and then we know when we would need to go to bed and waking up and what time a paper is due, or a letter that needs to be sent out, or some people need to be checked on and so on, a meeting schedule. With these students, you have to be on them at every point of the day to make sure that things are getting done. Maybe homework or chores at home. You have to set up certain times of the day when you can meet with them, and then certain times don't really work with them. They might become explosive if you approach them a certain way, you know. So what do you think work best? Do you think putting in a structure for them and get them to follow that structure work, or do you think having them build the structure with you as maybe a parent or a teacher works best for them?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are just certain givens, right? We want to set boundaries with anyone on the spectrum or not on the spectrum, right? Every child, every person, every human needs to have boundaries, right? You can't speak to me like that.
Right.
Look at me when you speak. Look in my eyes when you speak to me. Ask me properly. What is properly entails? Please, may I have this? May I have this? I want, please. Could you please pass me that? Thank you very much. Goodbye. Blah, blah, blah. Just basic things, right? So we're using the same thing, right? Because they're like us. And one of the things is that people, even when the child can't speak, a lot of times they understand you perfectly what you're saying, but people speak down to them. So yeah, you've got to do the basic things. Make sure that the child goes to bed by 8 o'clock, the light is off, right? Every single night by 8 o'clock, because when that child gets the developing mind, right? They need a child developing their mind. They need at least 10 hours minimum sleep a night. So that's a big deal, because if the child gets the rest, then it's much easier to deal with that child, right? To work with that child. I don't want to use the word deal as if it's something that's like, you know, a negativity. So you're setting boundaries. What you want with every single child on the spectrum or not, you want for that child to be able to function as an individual and to function independently. So even though they're on the spectrum, I mean, your job is going to be to find out what it is that they become engaged with. A lot of times with the boys on the spectrum, and this is a difference too, you'll find that they'll have a tendency to like puzzles, or they may like using building blocks or Legos, or, you know, trains. Girls, not so much. And one of the reasons is because for some bizarre reason, parents and caregivers don't think about giving girls Legos and building blocks and puzzles the way they do with boys, right? They usually give the girls the dollies and the makeup and, you know, the kitchen stuff. So they're not like exercising their minds, or they're not challenging them. So basically you want to get your kids to be engrossed reading, right? You want to get them to be able to sit by themselves, engaged, doing things without you breathing down their neck. And you can do that very, very well, and not very easily, but it's not as challenging as a lot of people think it is with a child on the spectrum. Right? You just need to spend time with them, with all your children. Speak to them, engage with them, let them know that they're important. Have dinner at the table. Everybody sit down and have dinner. If you can't have dinner 7 days a week, then you have it on weekends, right? That you sit down, and even if it's just like a big, nice Sunday breakfast, but you're sitting down as a family. And when you do sit down, you don't just sit down and eat in silence. You have a conversation, you have dialogue, and you're asking questions, you're listening, and you're answering the questions. Right?
In your line of work, you're working in the city in New York.
Right. Yeah.
Do you think that you have enough support from city resources to meet the demand of students who are who have problems with autism?
No, no. I'm working in a school right now, and I'm really lucky. This is like a freaky thing. And it's a Board of Ed school, and I'm in there,
Wow.
you know. Normally they don't like for somebody else to come in. They want to have their para. Thank God, I don't know why, even though it's a Board of Ed, it's almost like a boutique school. So it appears that the people in the school are very intelligent. And by that, I mean, they're emotionally intelligent, because you can have all the degrees in the world and you're still a moron.
True.
You really are. So
Yeah.
degrees mean nothing. So somehow these women, I don't know them very well because I haven't even been there for a month. But the little girl that I'm working with she's classified as severe. Tongue hangs out, a lot of dripping. She has to wear a bib, 2 bibs around her neck from 9:30. Recently this week, 9:30 to 10:30, she had gone through 3 bibs. And I mean, you could take the bibs and like wring it out, all right? And they had a para with her. And it's not the para's fault, but the para, hang on a second. I think, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. They have a para. So let me make this really quickly so I don't go on and on, because I have a tendency to talk. I love to talk. When you get me talking, I go. And the para, and so basically she was in a class before I came in. And again, as I said, I don't know if I mentioned this, she would just walk around the classroom and pick up stuff, and the para would follow her around, right? She was incapable of sitting for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes would be the longest. Supposedly that she was able to sit, but basically no, she could barely sit for 3 minutes. And when she did sit, it was only because she was eating lunch. And so there it is that they hired this para, nice woman, to be a babysitter. So she wasn't helping this little girl, right? When I came into the classroom, now she was in a second classroom, she was still doing the same thing that she was doing in the other classroom. So she hadn't progressed in any way, shape, or form. And I came and I looked at her for a couple of minutes. I saw her walking around the classroom. I walked over, I took her hand, and I just led her to a chair, pulled it out. I said, sit down, pushed her underneath. You're sitting really nicely, nice sitting, gentle hands. I placed her hands in front, beautiful, gentle, quiet hands. And then I just got some magnetic squares. She's not capable of doing squares, but this could engage her, right? And I just started, I put 3 pieces so it was able to stand up. I'm going to make a cube. And then I just helped her to attach it. And basically I stayed with her there doing that for a good 20 minutes the first day. All right. So, and throughout that 3 hours or 4 hours that I was with her, I was able to, the minutes just kept on getting higher and higher and higher, because
So
she was
they need one-on-one support though, because in the general ed classroom, there's no way a teacher will be able to take care of all the other kids and then focus on a student with autism.
No. And what they do is that, I'm sorry, I got off the track. You asked me a question, is are they supporting the kids?
Yeah, if you have enough resources, yeah.
They're not, right? Because that woman, she's getting paid, and God bless her, but she's like a babysitter and she doesn't know what she's doing, right? She's not able to help this child to progress and go forth and thrive, right? We want for the child to thrive. Everybody wants to thrive. That's the mantra: thrive, thrive, thrive. Be it that you're atypical or you're typical, thrive. And so the people in power, they've got these ridiculous rules, and no, you're supposed to be part of the Board of Ed. You can't be coming from a private company or whatever nonsense. I don't know, because I don't want to know. But what they should be looking at is, we need to get the best that we can for those children to go forth appropriately, and that they're going to be able to navigate their environment when they leave the school. So to answer your question, no, they're not doing enough.
Oh, wow.
They need to mix it up. They need different types of people coming in from different backgrounds with different experience that can add flavor to the pot and make that recipe as tasty as possible. Yeah. Right?
And Dr. Walker can jump in here anytime. I want to ask you though, do you think it's the number, pertaining to what Dr. Walker asked you earlier on with students who the number of students with autism, after looking at it for 4.5 years now and working with them. Is it stabilizing? Is it increasing?
Increasing. It just seems like it's an epidemic.
Really?
There's so
Oh
many
my God.
children. There's so many children. Yeah,
Okay.
on the spectrum.
Wow.
Is that increase due to
Wow.
a deeper understanding of what autism looks
Mhm.
like?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, right, because I work with the kids, so obviously it's very easy for me to notice almost instantaneously if something is awry, right? Something is off with that child. If there's some glitches, I can see it. A lot of times of the what's unfortunate is that the parent, they just don't want to take accountability and just accept that, you know, something looks a little bit also if it's a first child, they don't know. And then people will say, oh, they're not talking. They're you know, they'll do it later. A lot of times the kids start getting the help much later. Mm-hmm. Right, because they don't want to accept it. And sometimes I've seen kids who were pretty damn severe where the pediatrician, I don't know how it is, they did not tell those parents, like, there is something, your child, he needs to get it evaluated, you know. Yeah. We need to do an assessment. And it's just.
So your description about how girls experience autism compared to boys, do you think that put girls who are autistic at somewhat a disadvantage because they might not be as
noticeable or expressive? Yeah.
They're not what?
As expressive as boys, maybe, as they experience their autism, or maybe a little bit, as I say, sophisticated in it. Do you think that puts them at a disadvantage in the mainstream?
No, I mean, I think that you still notice that the girls have the behavioral issues when they do, right? You really do notice that they have the issues. The thing is that they are they're not as easy to. Oh, it's a tough one, because all kids are smart, innately smart, right? They're very sophisticated. And I think when kids are on the spectrum, they develop a lot of senses. Other senses are intensified, right? That's the senses that are lacking. There are other senses. And I call them like aliens, in the sense that they're able to span your energy, right? You're around them and they have these feelers that goes out. And it's almost like they can read your mind, but actually what they're reading is your energy. And that's why certain people that go in and work with kids are really good at getting instructional. I don't like using the word control, but that's one of the words that they use, right? You don't want to be controlling anyone, and you can't control anyone. You shouldn't be thinking,
manage them.
But it's like an instructional malleability, flexibility, right? So you are able to go in and have that child do a lot of things for you almost instantaneously, right? You're supposed to pair with the child over 2 weeks or thereabouts. I go in and I pair with them immediately, for whatever reason, right? Because I go in and I don't go in with a preconceived notion that this is a boy or this is a girl or this one is black or green or blue or red. And so that child can feel that, wow, this person is not, I don't know how I do it. I'm not judging them. I'm not forming an opinion about them. I'm not looking down on them. Girls, because boys and girls can do the same thing, where they can read your energy. Girls somehow, you know, they always say that girls are more mature, right? They develop faster than guys, right? From boys.
Yeah.
And so because that's been proven over many years, it applies when they're still on the spectrum. So they're able to navigate or kind of like steer people to kind of conform to what they want in a way that's when I use the word sophisticated. Right, whereas guys are more, it's more like they're a boy's more like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those explosive behavior, in the past. So you actually gave us a little bit more than in the past when we talk about autism and the spectrum and being on the spectrum. So we're switching gear here to you personally. After looking at students' behavior and applying methods of correcting maybe autistic behavior and so on, dealing with it. Who motivates you on a regular basis as per woman? A woman that motivates you, or women that inspire you to go along and be the best version of yourself in a world that is dominated by male leadership. I think we lost her, Dr. Barker.
Yeah, it seemed that way. She's gone.
And I really wanted to ask her who motivates her as much as possible.
Yeah, I realized you were.
Yeah, I think she got bumped off.
Yeah.
But Dr. Barker, this is really it's serious in itself. But learning about different people who have implemented strategies to actually identify students with autism.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
No, it's an interesting space. There's certainly some form of controversy as well about this space as well. Simply because as science and maybe sociology becomes a lot more, psychology certainly becomes a lot more aware of what autism is. There are people who question maybe new disorders that are seen to be on the spectrum. There are people who question semen bias, boys over girls in terms of diagnosis and perhaps treatment, or support. So I think we've gotten Cecile back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an area that, if you're working in a school, you'd come across and wonder what's been done.
Yeah. And while she was talking, you're right. And when she was talking I picked up on the idea of even ADHD, where it's very controversial. And to find out that our students are being diagnosed with all these different disabilities. Yeah. You just really wonder if there's some underlying factors there, deeper than that, than just what we're seeing happening on the surface here.
Yeah, I think we have Cecile back. You can ask your question.
Cool. So Cecile.
Yes.
Say something.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we're hearing you.
So we're closing off our show, but I want to ask you if you have a woman in your circle who inspires you, keep you going every day. It might be their words, it might be in the past that you read about somebody who inspired you, in this Women's Month. Who inspires you?
Oh man, I don't really, I know when I was a little girl growing up in Jamaica and they took me to where Nanny came from, that was a big deal for me. I mean, I remember I was like really I was overcome with emotion, right? Just knowing that this woman had led this army of men into battle and had conquered the English and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that was just a big frigging deal to me, okay? It really seared into my soul. But I don't really kind of like, have any female that I really look up to. But I do have a friend, a very, very good friend of mine, that had turned me on to that Magda Gerber. Her name is Janet Lansbury. And actually, they just did a major article on her in the New Yorker magazine. but she is extremely, extremely good at what she does. And she has a podcast on Apple. And a lot of times it's a #1 podcast. And what is it called? Jesus. Her name is Janet Lansbury. She does have a book called There Are No Bad Kids,
Wow.
or Unruffled. So if we're talking in terms of like working with kids, we have the same point of view or philosophy on how you treat children. And she's a master child whisperer. You know, if I get stuck with something with a child, even though she doesn't work with spectrum kids per se, and she doesn't work with kids, she just helps the parents how to be better parents, right? And she does the right technique. That's part of her thing. And but man, if there's any, if I'm stuck with like a kid falling down on the street and like refusing to get up, and I ask her, she tells me what to do. I follow it to a T. It never fails.
Wow.
So on that, you know, in regards to that, not like some famous legendary character. I don't really have anyone apart from Nanny that I just felt really inspired by when I was a child, right? But going forward as a grown woman, there, you know, but in the genre of what I do, then it would be my friend Janet Lansbury.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. All right. Thank you so much for being on our show. I really appreciate it. On from EduTALK point of view.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Both of you. Thank you.
We're gonna talk some more about this because we have to find out what's going on with our kids and how we can support them. You know.
I know.
Yeah. We really
definitely. So I'm always available. Just tap me whenever you need me, and I'm here. All right?
Yes, anytime.
And thank you so much.
Dr. Barker?
Yeah.
Yes. We will see.
It's great talking to Cecile.
Yeah.
I know, Dr. Barker, it was lovely meeting you. Thank you so much. Both of you.
Nice to meet you as well. And lots of knowledge, lots of shared, lots of stuff shared.
Okay, likewise. Okay. And thank you very, very much.
Right. Yes, anytime. We'll talk again. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for EduTALK. We will continue to enjoy Women's History Month, and we have another show coming up for you guys next week. So thank you so much for joining. You can drop your comments and your questions below, and we will answer them or find answers for you. So we will see you all next week. What were you saying, Dr. Barker?
All right. Okay, guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye.